Tumekuja kwenye semina mambo mbalimbali kuhusiana na maisha ya Marekani. Tunajifunza jinsi gani unaweza ukawa citizen, mambo kama hayo, utafanyeje, kipi kinafuata, muda gani na umri gani ambao unatakiwa kuchukua citizen. Na hapa kuna organization tofauti ambazo zipo hapa na zinahusiana na mambo mbalimbali ya kusaidia wakimbizi au watu ambao sio wazaliwa wa Marekani na wale ambao hawafahamu lugha ya Kiingereza. Endelea kufuatilia kwa update kibao, na nimekuja mengi zaidi kuyafahamu na kuelimika zaidi kuhusiana na jamii yetu na kipi kifanyike, unaweza ukafanya kwa ajili ya kitu ambacho sichokifahamu kwa ajili ya faida maisha yako na faida familia. Tufuatilie Didas TV kwa update nyingi kibao. Karibuni sana.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Regine Danga, Public Health Specialist at Partnership for the Public Good. Thank you, everyone, for coming today for the Senior Resources Fair. We are excited. So we're about to start. We have Didas TV over here. They are going to video this information, and it's going to be translated in Swahili so that people can have access on YouTube, so that more people than just a few population. So I'm going to start a little bit by introducing BUILT, and Jerry will come and say a little things about BUILT. Come on.
So thank you, Regine. So Regine's organization, Partnership for the Public Good, is also partnering with us. We are BUILT. BUILT is the Buffalo Immigrant and Refugee Leadership Team. We work with refugees and immigrants from 16 different ethnicities across Asia and Africa. To give you a little example, we have people from Burma, from Nepal, from Bangladesh, from Rwanda, from Congo, from South Sudan, from Tanzania. So we have different members, and it cuts across ethnic, religious, community, and lines. So we are the only organization here in Buffalo that represents a whole range of people. I mean, you do have organizations like you have the Karen Society of Burma that's only focused on one ethnicity from Burma, but we don't do that. So we started out as a faith-based group. It was an initiative of the Catholic Church. So we worked with Catholic Charities, and Catholic Charities linked us up with Voice Buffalo. I'm sure a lot of people know about Voice. So we were working together under their umbrella for a few years, and now we have our own 501c3 license. So we are an independent NGO that works directly with refugees, with stakeholders, with core groups that align with our view of what is required. So basically felt that the young people among the refugee and immigrant communities are what needs to be, the target of our assistance. So we work with the Buffalo Public Schools, not necessarily just for refugees or immigrants, but also for Americans as well, from minority groups who are marginalized, from Puerto Ricans who come, Hispanic groups as well. So we work particularly with Lafayette International High School, because that has about 50% of the school population is refugees and immigrants. So we've been working with them to reduce the suspension rates, to increase the graduation rates. We also try to focus on English language classes. We managed to work with the then superintendent of the Buffalo Public Schools, Dr. Kreiner Cash. We are now working with Dr. Tonja Williams and their team as well, their board, to actually have multilingual, teachers, have community school hours that are in the evenings, and we also got them to have community school hours on Saturdays to provide breakfast and lunch for the children that need assistance. And then we try to also work with parental groups and with parents, to see the causative factors as to why young people are acting out and then leads to their suspension. We are also working on healthcare, particularly on emotional health and behavioral health issues, because I am a refugee myself. I used to work for the UNHCR, so I know both sides of the coin. And there are a lot of psychological issues, trauma, a lot of pain and suffering for people who become refugees, because refugees just don't get up, leave their house and come here, We really have to do it because we have no other choice. And especially most vulnerable of all are women, mothers, and young children, so who have gone through a lot of unspeakable horrors. So they cannot talk about this, so it's projected on children, and then the children start acting up. So we have to look at all these causative factors, and for that we now work with Jewish Family Services, who have a clinic for this particularly. We do send a lot of people, in a very discreet way of course, to JFS. If any of you know anybody that needs assistance, please help them as well. So I'm just keeping it short, just to give you an overview. And we have our office here in this very building. Grace Karambizi is our executive director. Excel is here. She is our bookkeeper and administrative assistant. And if you all need to reach out to us, please do so. Thank you.
We are a community think tank, and we do a lot of policy development, advocacy, and research. We work on area issues that are impacting Erie County residents, Western New York. We work on a lot of issues, housing, health, education, name it, anything that's a concern for us here in Western New York. So we are going to move to the next agenda, which is immigration discussion. Especially for citizenship, and I'm going to invite Deja, who's going to be the moderator for this discussion. And we also have Alex here from Center for Elderly Law Justice, and also Thomas from Catholic Charities.
That this mic is for the camera and not for the room, so if it looks weird that we're speaking to a mic and there's no speaker, that's why that's happening. So I just want to note that. So I'm going to try and project, and I just want you guys to know to project also, because this is for the camera. But the other reason we wanted to do this is because there were community members that have been asking BUILT and other organizations that we've worked with in the past on refugee and immigrant issues that there were community concerns about citizenship, about access to resources for seniors, and just social service questions in general. And so we wanted to figure out a way in which we could make that more available to the community. And so we're doing something a little different today, where a community-based YouTuber is here to kind of tape some of the information so that it can be more widely available on social media, on YouTube, and things like that. So it might be a little bit unconventional for most community events that you've gone to. But we're trying to figure out new ways to reach refugee immigrant communities. So thank you for bearing with us on that. In the meantime, I would hope that everyone here, as well as the organizations, could use some of these resources. I know in conversations with some of the folks I've had here, you know, when people come in for a certain service, they also have other wraparound issues that are happening with themselves. And so we want to be able to arm not only the community, but other organizations with immigration and citizenship information so that you all are able to proliferate that to communities and to your networks as well. So we hope that you can take this as a network opportunity as well. So thank you. I think Regine already said, I'm Deja James. I work with Partnership for Public Good. I'm our Director of Policy Advancement and Media. So I will just get into the questions here. Thank you both, gentlemen, for being here. I'm going to be passing you the mic also for the camera. So, but really the first, we would just like both of you to introduce yourselves, your organizations, and your roles at those organizations.
Yeah, thank you very much. So thank you for giving me this opportunity to sit down in front of you. It reminded me my job as a teacher back home. But as a teacher, I used to stand, not to sit down. So anyway, my name is Thomas Shagaintuari, and I'm working with Catholic Charities of Buffalo in Immigration and Refugee Assistance Program. I have been working with the organization for 23 years. So 17 years as a case manager and 5 years now as DOJ, Department of Justice accredited representative. As an accredited representative, I assist immigrants to get some benefit from immigration. I represent the immigrant to immigration, and also I assist the immigrant to fill out some important applications, and the one popular one, of course, is the citizenship application, and it's the one I think we are here to talk about. No, thank you again for this opportunity to sit down in front of you.
My name is Alex Fairman. I'm the supervising attorney at Center for Elder Law and Justice in the Housing and Immigration Units. In my role there, I've worked with immigrants from really a lot of the communities that were already mentioned here today, including, but not limited to, the Burmese and Nepali, Congolese communities here, with applying for citizenship as well as navigating them through the process from the initial mailing of the citizenship application through the interview itself. And through that, myself and my organization, we've worked with a lot of people who are seniors who do not speak English or who cannot learn English due to some type of medical or psychological trauma that they have received. So we've done a lot of work on that as well. So I'm very excited to speak about some of those challenges and some of the ways to overcome them today.
First question, so you both can go, but I'm switching around the order a little bit, but how do legal representatives such as yourself or service organizations help people through the citizenship process? And how can that look different for seniors versus younger people or other people who are entering the country? yeah, I guess what does that process look like? You mentioned an interview, you mentioned a mailing of an application. I guess what does that step-by-step look like?
So at least from the legal services aspect, I can talk about how we will assist people in reviewing. Well, first we'll help them send in the application, which means we'll have them fill it out. We'll review it for any red flags that we will see. And that could be something as simple as saying yes to a question that we know that the Immigration Services is going to have some issues with. Not saying anyone here, but sometimes people will misunderstand and check yes to a military service where in their home country that was mandatory. That's a very good example. We can prepare them and say, okay, just so you know, the immigration officer is going to ask you about this. All you really have to say is that this was a mandatory service. They understand that a lot of countries have that. So we will prepare them through that process. Now, when it comes to the interview itself, for those of you who don't know, when you submit your citizenship application, you get scheduled for an interview actually just down the street at the USCIS, or United States Citizenship and Immigration Services office on Delaware, where they'll go through your application with you. We can get into a little bit more on some of the language barriers in a second, I know, but they will be giving you an English as well as a civics test. So we're there to make sure that the interview is fair, that none of the questions being asked are outside of the realm of what they should be asking. For example, when we go back to that military history question, asking about, okay, why did you serve in the military? What was the nature of that service? That's a fair question. They want to know a little bit more. Was it mandatory or was this voluntary? Asking, what specific wars did you fight in and how many people did you encounter or fight? A little bit outside of the realm of reasonability, because there's really not a lot of reason to bring up that trauma. So we would advocate there that question not be asked and that they rephrase or revise that question. And then regardless of the outcome, we'll explain the legal steps to either a second interview, a reapplication, or, in the best case, people get granted citizenship, what their next steps are. Okay, now it's time, hey, if you want to apply for United States passports, here's how you do that. Apply to vote, here's some resources for that as well.
As my co-speaker said, so we go through the citizenship application, we go through all questions from A to Z. So the main problem is this: do really our client understand what the question are talking about? If they do not understand, that will be a problem. So I'm going to say something. The people we see in our offices, I'm going to divide them into categories. We have immigrants, especially refugees and asylees, who have a good background education. This is category number one. Category number two is a group of immigrants who has no education, zero education. So, am I going to treat these two categories at the same level? I don't think so. So the first category is easy. The only thing they are lacking is English. But the second category, they know nothing, no English, no read, no write, no speak. What are you going to do with those people? I think that this is where we are going to talk about in a few minutes, because those are really hard people to deal with, because they don't know anything.
And to that point, especially why we came to talk here today, for senior refugees or people maybe with disabilities or different learning abilities, they aren't able to overcome the language barrier, or it is later in life, and we know that it's more challenging the older you get to learn a new language. So how are there ways to overcome that barrier for people and the language requirement for citizenship? Is there a way to circumvent that? Is there a way that there's an exemption from that requirement, or that there's a possibility you can be a citizen without being able to learn English?
Okay, so before we get to the point, let's go quickly together with the requirement to be eligible to apply for the citizenship.
Okay.
So I print out a brochure. I'm going to read. Since I'm going to go ahead with you. So to apply for the citizenship, you must be at least 18 years old. At least 18 years old. You must have been a lawful permanent resident. To me that to have a green card for at least 5 years. You must demonstrate the continuous residence in the United States for at least 5 years. You must have lived in the U.S. state, or U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services district where you claim residence for at least 3 months before filing. You must have demonstrated the physical presence in the United States for at least 30 months. You must demonstrate a good moral character. You must demonstrate an attachment to the principles of the U.S. Constitution. You must demonstrate a basic knowledge of U.S. history and the government, also known as civics, as well as an ability to read, write, speak, understand basic English. Please highlight this one. You must demonstrate a basic knowledge of history and the government. You must know how to read, write, speak, and understand basic English. And also the last one, you must demonstrate you are willing to take the oath of allegiance to the United States, and you are well disposed to good order and happiness of the United States. So you mentioned if there is some exemption, of course they are. So
Can I ask a clarifying question quickly?
So you go ahead.
The moral character one, is that alluding to you can't have a criminal background?
Yes, you are right. So what are the exceptions? The exceptions are this, but we are going to see if those exceptions really apply to our client. 50 years and 20, what does it mean? If you are 50 years older and over and have been in the United States for at least 20 years, you are exempted for the English test. Means they skip the reading, the writing, the speaking, the listening. But you still have to know, you still have to be tested for the civics.
Okay.
Now, 55 years old and over, and you have been in the USA at least 15 years and over. And in that case, you are also, so they went to skip the reading, the writing, the listening, but you are still going to be tested for the civics. Let's move to 65 years and over. 65, of course, they are going to skip also the reading, writing, listening, but you still have to do the civic test. In the good news, if you are 65 and over, they are going to give you the simplified test. And also you can choose to answer in a language you want. Now, go back to 50 years old. Let me say you are 25 years. Are you going to wait 25 more years to be exempted for those reading, writing, whatever? I don't think so. I think that if you are 5, you are ready, it's better to go ahead with the test. So the problem again comes with the categories I was talking about. If you do have 0 education, you do not know how to read, how to write, even in your native language, are you really ready to go with the citizenship application? The question will be there. So I think that's, so
What does good moral character mean? What does continuous residence mean? And some of these services that are here today, we know what those things mean, and we can walk you through those questions. So I think that's why a lot of these services here are really, really important. And I just wanted to touch on, what if you don't fall into those categories that you would be exempted? I can say personally, when I've assisted many people and I've had one person who's fallen into one of those exempted categories. There is, but you don't speak English, or you have a problem with learning English, United States history, United States government questions, there is one other potential way for another group of people to get exempted from that English language requirement. And that is through something called Form N648. Now, I know that rolls off the tongue. Everyone remembers all names and numbers, but what this is if someone who wants to apply for citizenship or needs to apply for citizenship, but has a medical condition that prevents them from learning English or demonstrating their knowledge of English, they can use this form to apply for that exemption. It does need to be completed by a medical doctor, a doctor of osteopathy, so an MD or a DO, or a clinical psychiatrist. So not just any medical professional can do this, it has to be specific licensed people. And basically what they will do is they will explain the medical condition and why it prevents the applicant from either learning English, United States history, or demonstrating their knowledge. And they can apply that to some or all of those requirements. For example, let's say a senior in the community has a stroke, which is horrible, but unfortunately that does happen. And they actually have not been in the United States for that 10, 15, or 20 year period. But now, even though they had learned English, they can't speak anymore. A doctor can say, okay, I've examined this person. Because of the stroke, they can no longer speak, and therefore they can't actually answer these questions verbally. And that person then may qualify for an exemption or an accommodation, where they would answer the questions via writing, or they would answer the questions via a tablet. A lot of now USCIS offices are moving in that direction. Or say someone in the community has a condition, unfortunately, like dementia or Alzheimer's. Now that would prevent someone from learning, especially something as complicated as a language. They could apply for a full exemption from the history, the written, the reading, the writing, and the spoken English tests. I will caution people, the only way that you're going to know if this form was approved is at your first interview. It's still worth doing, and that's why a lot of the services are helpful, because we can sort of get an idea of what the immigration officer is going to say before we even submit the form. And if something's left off, we can say, hey, I'm sorry, you got to go back to your doctor and let them adjust this one section. So I did bring, I think, 10 copies if anyone wants to pick this up, just to take a look at it.
You both want to add, or if there are any other questions, we do want the video to be able to capture introductions from other organizations here too, just so that People that's from the Kiswahili speaking community can also have all of your information in their language available, as long as you're comfortable getting on camera. But were there any other specific questions or things that we missed from this citizenship conversation for anybody? I'm gonna give a second. Yeah, the question for the camera. So the question is, what's the difference between someone kind of entering the country, going over the border, and a refugee?
It's a good question. So I'm not really an expert in laws, but a refugee is somebody who leaves his country because of fear of being persecuted. You can leave your country because of the war. Most of the people we see in our office are refugees. It means that they came from different countries because of wars. So to be a refugee, first, you do not choose to be a refugee. It's just a situation that comes to you, then you run away. You cross the border of your own country, and you do not go back. So, but to be a refugee, you must be recognized by UNHCR and have a number. So the people you see here as refugees, they came here in collaboration with United States of America and UNHCR. These are totally different from the people you see, they cross the borders. Those may cross the border to come here to looking for a job or a better life, but are not refugees. They are totally different.
Do refugees have to apply for citizenship once they're here? I just wanted to clarify that.
Yes.
Okay.
Refugees are eligible to apply for citizenship if they are green card holder, if they are permanent resident for at least 5 years. So I'm going to clarify here. Once you get here as a refugee, after 1 year, you are eligible to apply for a green card. You are eligible to apply to be a permanent resident or adjust of status. Once you are approved for permanent residence, then you count 5 years to start the application of citizenship. The good news, you can earlier start the application. So actually, you can start the application at 4 years and 9 months.
Okay.
Another question.
Okay.
So, as somebody that comes here as a refugee, so I'm a businessman, and I also happen to be a tradesman. I'm a licensed master plumber. Can I teach my trade to people that come in as refugees and are they able to enter the workforce immediately?
Yeah, I can. Oh, sorry, okay, no. Sure. That's a very good question as well. Just to catch it on the video, in case the audio didn't pick it up, question was, for someone who comes in as a refugee, can a business owner or tradesman not only impart those skills, but start to employ them as an employee immediately? I will say, depending on where they are in the process, generally they would have to get work papers before they can legally work in the United States. That can happen more quickly or less quickly depending on the individual circumstances. It's something that you would want to make sure that they have done all of what they need to do from USCIS's or United States Citizenship and Immigration Services perspective before they employ. I will say that a lawful permanent resident, as a general rule, can work in the United States. The only other thing I wanted to quickly add is that when someone comes in as a refugee, when they are claiming that status, they're telling the United States government that the country that I left was so bad, unfortunately, that I needed to flee. I had no choice but to move. Which means if someone who claims a refugee status ever goes back to visit that country, then they can run into a lot of problems when they're applying for citizenship, because the United States government may say, well, your country was so bad that you claimed you need to be a refugee. Why did you go back? And that's a big distinction, and is something that unfortunately a lot of people don't realize.
So let him, so can you give a minute? No, since I'm going to add one thing to your question. A refugee here in America is allowed to work. Why? When you enter United States as a refugee, at the port of entry, you fill out the application of employment authorization card. When you get to your destination, few weeks later, you get your authorization to work in America. Refugees and asylees, approved asylees, are allowed to work in America. Don't be afraid to hire them. They have the right. They are allowed to work in the United States.
Is there a resource to connect an employer such as myself?
Yes, there's something called the Refugee Partnership. The local refugee resettlement agencies have an employer pipeline for refugees that are here that need work settlement. So I can get you that information after we're done also. Yeah, of course. We had a question over here. I just want to get to that. I'm sorry.
Sorry.
It did.
Oh.
I wanted to know, how long does it take for them to be authorized to work? And then, I was wondering, do they have to wait the 5 years until they apply for residency? So they don't, but you answer. And then there is a mechanism in place to be able to offer placement.
For refugees and asylees, like people that officially came through a system of application to get into the U.S. When you just cross the border, no, that's a different story.
So, follow-up question, if you're not a part of the refugee partnership, how do you get engaged with them?
There's a new program coordinator. I can get you their information. I have to look it up after. They're not here today, unfortunately. But there's a pipeline with all of the refugee resettlement agencies made this thing called the Refugee Partnership, and they do like job placement. They do training with workforces and employers locally, so that they are understanding of what the legalities are of how you hire refugees and immigrants and things like that. So there's like a whole network. I went a few months ago, or rather it probably was last year. They had a presentation of this group and that initiative at the library downtown on behalf of their programming. So they have a partnership with a few different like hotels, factories, and different types of employers, hospitality and stuff in the area, and they would love to connect with more employers. They were actually looking to recruit more employers.